In this video, we're going to be covering how to create UVs inside of ZBrush. And before we do that, we're going to hop on over to Maya and we're going to take a look at how to get a model out of Maya and bring that into ZBrush so we can start working with the resurface model that we made inside of Maya. Okay, we've hopped on over to Maya, and here is the model that we looked at in the earlier video on how to resurface inside of. This is also the model coming from the video where we learned how to set up UVs inside of Maya. But I'm going to treat this as if this model didn't have any UVs and we wanted to actually make some quick temporary UVs inside of ZBrush. So I'm going to show you how to get this model out of Maya and pull it into ZBrush. So we're going to go File, Export Selection, and we're going to use an OBJ option for this for exporting out. I like to leave everything on except for materials, and I just turn that off. And we'll just export this out, and I will go ahead and put it into a folder that I have, and I'm going to call this Maya Resurf model, like that. Okay, and now we'll hop back on over to ZBrush, and we're going to import that in. So when we import a model in, if we have a model selected and we're viewing it like this and it's in the edit mode, ZBrush is going to think if we try to import that model, we want to update one of the current models that we have selected in the subtool area. So if you see on here, currently I have these models selected on the subtool, and if I go to import, it's going to think that I want to change that model and maybe change the UVs or something like that. So that is a cool process if you know, this model that I'm bringing in needed some UVs or something like that. I could drop it down to the low subdivision level and then just hit import, and it would update the UVs or polygroup information that we made in another program. But in our case, we want to bring in an entirely new model. So we need to tell ZBrush to switch off this current model that we have, and we can do that pretty easily by just finding this simple brush icon and clicking on it. And I'll ask you if you want to go out of the current edit mode and switch over to some other mode. So just go ahead and say switch, and you can see your cursor turns white, and that means the model's been dropped to the 2D canvas that they have. And you can clear the canvas. You can hit Control N at any time. You can Control N and clear the canvas and get that information out of there. And then now we're free to go ahead and hit import and then navigate for that model that we have. So I'm going to navigate to where I put that model, and so I've got my model selected, and let's go ahead and click on it and say open, and then now I can pull it in. This model, it says it has quads and triangles, and I can go ahead and tell it to just use this method. I usually use this method if I have some kind of problem with the model. So that's usually an indication that I might need to go back to Maya and kind of check things out. I usually don't like to pull in a model that has maybe 5-sided faces or things like that. So that could be an issue, and I could go hop on over to Maya and I could check that. There's some tools within inside of Maya that helps you kind of figure these things out. So if you go under polygons and go to the mesh tab up here and then go to cleanup, there's some options for telling it to select anything that you find that might be a problem. Make sure you put it on this select, otherwise it'll actually try to do some changes to the model. So you can see this one here says faces with more than 4 sides. We can do that, and then also this lamina faces, that's like if there's a geometry sitting directly on top of one another and you couldn't even kind of tell that that's happening, you can select that. We'll go ahead and hit apply, and you can see if it selects anything. I'll tap 4 and go into wireframe mode, and if it selects anything, it'll highlight those faces for you, so you can take a look and figure out what the problem is. So you can see I've only got 2 faces on this model that have a problem, and you can see we've got a 5-sided polygon, and that's what ZBrush doesn't really like. So then I can go ahead and fix that pretty easily. Okay, with a little work I was able to go into this area and then redirect some of the polygon flow that was coming around here, and it basically got rid of some loops, and then I also kind of redirected coming down here and pushing down at the bottom. So this is kind of this new loop that was kind of redirected in this flow. I'm still not completely and totally happy with this area right here. I would like this to kind of flow all the way around in a circle, but doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. I think that'll be okay for what we're going to be looking at. So that's just a quick reminder of how you can use some of these tools within inside of Maya to check and look for certain problems within your Maya model before you really get going and doing some projection and doing some other things inside of ZBrush. So it's a little off topic for this video, but if you are importing in, if you see that, I wanted you to have an understanding of why you might be seeing that error message. So let's hop on back on over to ZBrush, and then now we've already got this model in here, and even though we've done updates to it, like I was saying before, we can update this model. So you can see here's the old topology flow that we had going on here, and we had a little bit of a problem. ZBrush didn't like one of the faces, and it basically, you see how it turned that five-sided face into a triangle right there? That's how it resolved the problem. So I mean, that you could do it that way, but if you want to be really specific and make sure you've got quads for everything, you can go through that process I just showed you. But we've got this model, and if I go ahead and hit import, instead of doing the simple brush and switching off this, it tells ZBrush to update that model. So I'm going to say import, select the model, hit open, and now you can see here's the new version with our new flow of geometry through here. Okay, so that's getting ZBrush the models that you might need from another program, and then now we're going to start looking at how we can transfer the detail from our old model onto this new model. I guess before we do that, we could set up our UVs within this model. So let's just go to the Z plugin area, and we'll go to UV master. We'll go ahead and open that, and you could tell it to use symmetry. It's got symmetry on. You could tell it to try to use polygroups. We don't have any of that information, but we could just go ahead and hit the unwrap button. Before we do that, I just want to tell you it is possible, if you're really worried about something happening to this model, it is possible for you to work on a clone. So you click that and it'll make a clone of this current version of your model. And let me go dock this so I can make sure I can always see this stuff. And when you're working on a clone, when you're done, you can hit copy UVs, and then you can paste your UVs onto another model. So it is possible that you could do that as well. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the unwrap, and it'll go through its process, and let's just check out the results. So you can see that's pretty quick for unwrapping that entire model. If we scroll down here to the bottom, we can go to UV map, and you can tell it, if we start working with a map, what size resolution we'll be using for our map that we have. So it's currently set to 2048. One thing that's kind of cool is you can click this morph UV button, and it'll actually take your 3D version of your model and then splice it open and show you exactly what the UVs would look like in 2D. So that's a nice way of checking things out. So that's basically the UV layout that ZBrush has created for us. Now, something to note about ZBrush is the UVs are kind of upside down from all the other programs that I'm used to using. So you're actually looking at this a little bit different than what you might see in another program. So if you notice that things are kind of upside down, that's probably what the deal is. So there's also a place in textures where we can go and create, and we can say create a new texture from a UV map, and it'll make this texture that you see here, and we can take a look at what it's created. This is what I'm talking about here. So this looks like the UVs are okay for that. Looks like the red part is up in here. The other thing we can do is new from UV check. So that's another way of generating a map that you can kind of check the UVs for. So any of those methods will be fine for letting you know how to generate that you've actually generated UVs and you're kind of ready to go. So the UV master, I like to use this maybe if you're doing some stuff on some high-res geometry and you don't want to take the time to make UVs like what I showed you in the other video in Maya. It'll get you there to where you can start painting on that and get color on a map and then export the information outside of ZBrush. But I probably would not use it for final UVs. I would just use it for specific cases where I don't really care about the technical requirements. I just need a map to get out of this program. That's probably where I would use these UVs. So I'm going to go ahead and import back in my model. So we've created those UVs inside of ZBrush, and I want to pull back in those UVs that I made in Maya, so I can just hit open for that. Now you can see that map's going to look really weird, obviously, because the UV checker thing that we did earlier is now on, and we've updated our UVs to the Maya UVs. So we can just do create new from UV check, and now you can see here's the Maya UVs. So this is what I'm talking about, where in Maya the head's at the top, and here in ZBrush it's flipped upside down. So just something to keep in mind, that you're going to have to keep an eye out for that. Alright, now that we have our model in ZBrush and we've got everything going for us for the UVs, it's time for us to look at how we can transfer the detail and all the sculptural elements that we've made earlier in the videos and transfer that to this new piece of geometry that we have with this new UVs on it. Okay, so I'm going to take this geometry and I'm going to actually add some subdivision levels to it. So I'm right here under geometry, and I'm just going to hit divide a few times. We'll just hit it like 3 times or so. And I've got my subdivision levels. I can step up or down to my subdivision levels. Just hit Shift D, and that drops down, and I can hit D to go up. So I'm going to hit Shift D to go all the way down. And you can see this is my current subtool that I'm working with, is just this piece of geometry. I need to have everything that I want to project detail-wise onto this model loaded up. So I've got a subtool over here that's got a bunch of different tools associated with it. So it's all my high-res geometry for this character. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here to the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and hit append, and I'm going to find this piece of geometry and go ahead and click on that and load it. And you can see it should take this new piece of geometry that we have and put it at the bottom of the subtool stack. Now we can always just click the solo button here, and we can just look at this individual piece of geometry that we have. If we click on it, and if we click off solo, you can see that we're only working with this. So I will need to have everything visible that I want to project from. So let's take a look real quick by hitting solo at this model. So really I only need the pieces from the head. I don't need the eyeballs because I don't have eyeballs put into this model. That would be something that's separate. I didn't include the teeth, and we don't have the stand that's at the bottom of this. So I need to isolate all those pieces with their visibility. So I can go through my my stack here, and then I can just go ahead and make sure I've got the piece that I'm going to be projecting onto. That's the one that's selected, and then I can go to the eye icon and hide anything that I don't want to project over. So I've got these mechanical things. I should probably turn those off as well. And I've got this tech piece on here, and I think I turned that off as well. And we've got this tongue, turn that off. The spine that's going down the back, I didn't incorporate that in here. And then these eyes are actually the eye bags that go around the eye, so I do need those, but there should have been some eyes that I included. But I think I put that with these extras here. So I can click on this and just solo that piece right here. So these are all the different extra pieces that I have. So I don't need the eyes or the teeth. So I'm going to go ahead and hide those. I'm going to put it on the select rectangle, and you can hold down Control and Shift and get to that right in through here. And as I hold down Control and Shift, I can drag out, and then my selection is green. And I'm still holding down Control and Shift and moving my cursor. If I add Alt to that, that's going to turn the cursor red, and that means it's going to take away visibility for whatever's in that box. So you can see here's all my pieces that are left, and I've got that on solo, so I'll turn solo off. And then now this should give me a good look at everything that I'll be using to project from. So basically, if I come down here, select this model, and it looks like everything's pretty darn close to the surface of the model, just because that's the way we resurface that inside of Maya. So we're good on that. The next step would be if I turn on solo like this, and if I go down to the texture map, I'm going to turn off this UV information. I just don't want to see anything other than just the model. If I tap D to step up my subdivision level, if you remember we just went to geometry and added a subdivision level here, we go the next level up. If we go to subtool, we can go and say project right in here, and we can say project all, and it's going to give a distance for how far out it's going to search for that high-res piece. Now I've got it on solo, so this stuff, it really is there. It's just with the solo button turned on, you can just look at exactly the piece of mesh after it's being projected. So we'll hit that button, and it's going to say, do you want to transfer polypaint data? You can tell it yes or no, or I'll just say no for that. I'm not worried about polypaint information right now. If I turn on solo, you can see exactly how that projection is working. So we'll tap D to go up to the next subdivision level, and we'll do a project all again. So here's how things look after we've done that projection. We'll have to add another subdivision level. Just hit Control D, or you can go here into geometry and hit divide, and then you're going to have to open up the subtool and say project all. So you're going to have to keep going through this process until you get all your detail back, but then you'll be in a mode where you've got your new geometry that you've laid out inside of Maya. You'll have your new UVs, and then when you project all, you'll get back that sculptural detail that you had in all your multi pieces and push that back onto your final model. I wanted to make sure you also understand that this is not a perfect process, so sometimes you might have to get areas on your model that you're going to have to clean up. Sometimes it doesn't project far enough out, or maybe it's projecting too far and grabbing different parts of the model. Sometimes it might have too much of a crack, and you might have to smooth out the results in the area, and then maybe put it on some kind of brush where you're digging in a little bit more so it catches that projection. So you're going to have to kind of watch this process and then kind of step up in every subdivision level and watch the projection as you step up and down the process doing this projection here. You have to kind of really pay attention to what's going on to the model, and sometimes you're not going to get a perfect projection, so you might have to just live with you've got 95 to 98% of your model back, and then you might have to do a little bit of resculpting in certain areas. Okay, so this is how you can do those simple UVs, but I wanted to also show the projection process so you can get your model in a state that you can start painting textures on there, and then also start to build normal maps inside of ZBrush. You have to have these subdivision levels like what we've created in order to make a normal map inside of ZBrush. So that's why it's really important to work hand in hand with the UVs on the model and the subdivision levels as well.